I don't know what I'm doing, really. I mean, that's really the truth. I really don't know what I'm doing. But I definitely have a compass, I guess, of what I think is right and what I think is cool. That's a shallow word, but like cool being authentic and what's going to resonate with the community of bass players.
Obi Original is a Nigerian-American musician and producer based in Minneapolis, Minnesota. He co-founded Ozone Creations, an artist collective dedicated to promoting diverse Black musical genres and fostering community through music. Ian Allison is an enthusiastic and versatile electric bass player living in Minnesota. He has worked as a session and touring musician and is well known for making and sharing videos online as a content creator and educator, and is the creative director of ScottsBassLessons.com. This is Artists Interviewing Artists.
Yeah, so nice to meet you, man.
I'm excited.
I'm excited too.
Yes.
Have a seat.
All right.
All right.
Okay, so this is the interview, the beginning of it.
Beginning of the interview.
Yeah, man. But I was gonna say, do you know how you want to start the questions? You want to go first? Or?
I want to ask you something first.
Yeah, bro.
You into that?
Yes.
I notice when I check out your content, see your shows, see what you do, there is a fearlessness to you on stage that is so enviable. Like I see it and I go, oh, I probably, like so many other people, feel sort of constricted in my body. Like I feel kind of like if I'm going to move, I feel sometimes self-conscious or like, what are they going to think about how I just moved? I hate that feeling. It's a horrible feeling. And you seem to be devoid of it. Have you always been? And if not, how did you get to that comfort level in your performance?
I mean, it really started with how I was raised in the home. Mm-hmm. So originally, I'm of Nigerian descent. So when I was growing up, I actually had a lot of, not training, but influence from the music that I grew up with. And sometimes I was fortunate to see like old VHS tapes of all these people performing. And I kind of noticed that same thing that you described, the fearlessness.
Yes.
And I was like, this is something that I feel like, if I put my mind to it, I think I could possibly do myself.
Yeah.
So we have this like yearly festival in Minneapolis called Igbo Fest in August. So ever since 1999, I've been performing there.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'll be doing cultural dances. I'd organize, the drum troupe, and whatnot. So that was kind of like a very strong prelude
Yes.
to what I see as my contemporary career so far. Yeah, man. But yeah, it's very true. And anytime I do pop out in that aspect, it's really in the respect of knowing that you're doing it for not yourself, but those on the floor.
Yeah. And it seems to make everyone else feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Like everyone else, it gives them permission to maybe move or like feel okay in their body. And it's like one of the many things I admire about you.
Oh, much love, man.
Yeah.
That means a lot. That means a lot, bro. 100. And I mean, that kind of goes into one of the questions I had too. What was the moment, at least for you, when it comes to your career, when you were just like, this is kind of the turning point? Your burning bush moment where it was like, this is what I want to do.
Burning bush moment, turning point.
Yeah, not to be too spiritual.
No, I love it. I feel like I've just had several. I'll describe two. Yeah. The first one, I was like a tall, awkward kid, and I was bad at all the sports. Yeah. Terrible. But because I was tall, I was in basketball. So, and I was like the center of my Rotary basketball team. I grew up in Kalispell, Montana, this little town in Montana. And I remember getting the ball with all my family was there to see the game. I probably was 13. And I had a shot and I shot and missed and got the ball again. I got the rebound, which was rare and odd. And I took a shot again and the crowd is like roaring. And I think they're like, yeah, like Ian, kill it, like, and I get the rebound. I miss a second time, embarrassing. And I get the rebound again, but it was easy, like really easy to get it. And I took a third shot and missed the third shot. Yeah. And then a guy from the other team came in and laid it in the basket I was shooting at. And I realized I'd been shooting at the wrong
basket.
And I looked up, dude, into the stands, and my entire family, my cool uncle, my dad, my mom, my sister, they were all like this.
Oh, my. Yeah, I can bet.
Just like heads in their hands. And it was horrible and so demoralizing. I said to my mom, I can't do this anymore. And she said, well, you have to do something. And I was like, I think I want to play the bass. And that was a big turning point for me. I had some people in my family that played. And once I got that instrument in my hands, it was like pretty soon I knew that it was the thing. And just a flash forward to when I turned 40. I'm 45 now.
Yeah.
When I turned 40, I had a real burning bush moment. I've never heard that phrase before, but I love it. Where I decided that I was going to go all in on content and like specifically on Instagram.
Yeah.
And try to be myself on the internet, which I think is absolutely impossible almost to like try to like really be yourself online and not care what people think. And I tried that to the best of my ability and grew that platform. And so for me, that was a big moment of like, I'm going to stop pretending. I'm going to try to like try to be cool guy. I'm just going to like put the flag in the ground for the stuff that I really like, even though it might be embarrassing and I may not get that gig. I might not be perfect for, and so that was huge. That was 5 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
And even in that context, that's kind of a full circle in only the few minutes that we've been doing the conversation, because I do see that fearlessness in your content. That's one thing that I really do admire about you. I feel like I'm able to see that you're able to put your all forward, even though sometimes in rituals it might not be easy or hard, and you're able to do that fully. And I've always been in a spot in my career where I've always tried to find that middle ground, So like, sorry to just to expand on it, but how do you find that ebb and flow now going into the, the content creation?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? With the real life and then also the persona. Because even with my own career, I've always wanted to be like, my name is Obi.
Yes.
So I don't want to be known as this or that. If anybody knows me, it's by the name my mom kind of gave me. That was mine. and I try to keep it original. But right. Yeah, at least for you, how do you do it, brother? Chai! If you see this guy's content, bro. Honestly.
I mean... I guess I really enjoy it. Yeah. That's the first thing. Is I think a lot of people look at social and they think like, oh, it's this drudgerous task. It's this thing that sucks, but I have to do it because everybody's doing it. But I like it. I like building that community. I like telling the story. I like posting. I sometimes wake up and think about it. But what I've noticed, and I wonder too, I want to ask you this too, is I've noticed that there is a real odd delineation between what people think of, how people admire musicians and artists versus content creators.
Yes.
And there's sometimes this real division, right? Of like, oh, true artist, true musician, and like YouTuber.
Yes.
Or like content creator has kind of like a lesser shine to it, which is really interesting. Yeah. And I find that I don't know, I kind of operate in both spaces, but some people perceive me in one camp or the other. And depending on that camp that I'm perceived in, that's how they, that's how they talk to me, or
that's the aura. Of then how the relationship kind of moves on. And for me personally, it comes from the aspect of, I'm a person that believes that history truly repeats itself in different forms. Yeah. So meaning in the context of like what you say, as a content creator and also as a musician, I look at time, and I look at the time we had the gold button on YouTube.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
That was maybe a decade ago.
Right.
Yes. I remember the evolution of dance.
Yes.
Experiencing that kind of stuff. Numa.
Yep.
We're still at the birth of this thing.
Yes.
as humans, we get in the space of it being like, okay, because of how we get older, it's natural. But then I feel like it's also important to see that we're in an era now where there is some of that dissonance. But I do believe, as the years go by, that all of it will ebb and flow.
Of course.
Just like, for example, when you talk about the history of even jazz in itself.
Yes.
Classical. You have that classical beginning. Then ultimately you do have, Miles Davis doing his thing.
Right.
People that want to establish Renaissance men and women.
Yes.
And in that context, I think that is kind of the gauge of if you're going to be in the business or if you're not going to be in the business.
Right.
Because if you're not Renaissance in the context of history, then you're not going to last.
Right.
But if you are Renaissance, you will have a legacy that will move on and will influence other people.
Oh.
You understand? So even like that goes back to, I forgot what song it was, but I'm a big fan of J.S. Ondara.
Yes, so am I.
I know. I'm done by that one.
So am I.
Yeah, but I mean, like in that context, like, for you being a musician in that way, I forgot the song, if you can enlighten me, that you had with him that you played bass on. Was it on Spanish Villager?
Yes, it's called Witch and the Saint.
Yes.
And that's, okay, that's the one on Spanish Villager.
Because like even in that context, I'm not gonna lie to you, I got from the composition a lot of like Brown Eyed Girl vibes.
Oh, sure.
Even with like your bass line, not in a bad way.
Sure.
But I would say that like even for me, I'm able to appreciate that composition because now I'm able to see you in your content and how deeply you go into describing, different factions and forms of music to now go to your composition and really see the full thing. So I feel like people eventually will get to a point as you grow in love with somebody, that you will want to learn more and go deeper.
Ooh.
So I feel like we'll be all right.
All right.
We'll be okay.
Okay, you mentioned legacy.
Yeah.
And that's something I think about a lot with content creation and art creation and is there a difference in all that? But I guess what I want to ask you is I love that word. I like that you brought it up. How do you want to curate your legacy? Like what are the things that you're actively thinking about that you want people to remember or know about you?
Yeah. It's just to have an analogy again, as me being spiritual as a Christian, I've always been rooted in the church too. And what I've noticed is when you have somebody preach, they're up.
Yes.
When you have the congregation, we're down. And the one thing I've wanted to do is on my walk, really expand it to places that I know I've not seen that spirituality before.
Yep.
So that means that eventually I want people to realize that what I'm trying to do is give you something that is new to you.
Yeah.
But that has been here for thousands and thousands of years, because even if I look at the history of America per se, and I compare and contrast the history of Nigeria got its independence in 1960.
Wow, right.
America 1776. So it's been a while.
It's been a while.
Right? So I know I'm in a space in the context of my Nigerian heritage and culture that it is the beginning of the Enlightenment.
Yes.
With people that become weary of my music, of my sound and what I do. And also, too, when some people also ask me, like, okay, how do I get that notion to perform like the way I do? It's because I'm preaching at least a gospel of Afrocentrism.
Yes.
I went to St. John's University here in Collegeville.
Okay.
My senior thesis was about Fela Kuti.
Oh, yeah.
So I called it Fela Kuti, the Beast of Two Nations.
Oh, yes.
And it talks about and coincides with this guy. His name is Paul Gilroy, but his Black Atlantic theory.
Okay.
So the Black Atlantic theory is in the idea of although there was a slave trade and whatnot, there was still the trade of commerce, of goods and art and music. So at the end of the day, is a cycle that goes round and round. The reason that people like something like, for example, I always say it like this, you want to be starting something.
Sure.
The reason people like it is because Michael Jackson went to Studio 54 and heard a Manu Dibango record.
Right.
And he heard it and said, I like this.
Funky.
This is funky.
Right.
But you see, Manu Dibango was influenced by the funk of James Brown.
Mm-hmm.
It goes back and forth, and forth.
Yes.
You know, so I've just seen myself as, in my creativity, having a duty to continue that legacy, you know, in the context of high life music, Afrobeat music.
Yeah.
So, yeah, bro.
I want to ask you, can I ask you a follow-up?
Yes, please.
Of Paul Simon's Graceland.
Yes.
I got a chance to speak to Bakiti Kumalo,
Yeah.
who played in, who's a bass player and still plays with Paul Simon.
Yeah.
And I asked him specifically about Diamonds on the Soles of Her Shoes and this thing that he plays. When Paul goes up into this falsetto thing, Bakiti comes up and plays this melody that sort of dances around Paul. And I was like, what is that?
Yeah.
And he said, I was like, how did you come up with it? And he said, oh, that's the way people where I'm from sang.
Yeah.
And I thought that I just could hear a choir singing that. And so that's what I did. And I thought I would maybe get replaced at some point. Lady Smith was coming in. And maybe they were going to, and that would go away. But it didn't. They kept it. And so I guess for you, that was my introduction to world.
Yes.
To Afrobeat music.
Yes.
My grandfather loved that record, right? So played it all the time. And but do you feel like the music, I guess so Bakiti was channeling African singing in his playing.
Yes.
And when you play, because you're a monster guitar player.
I appreciate you, bro.
And singer, but when you're playing guitar, does that come from, are melodies coming to you from that heritage of African singing?
Yes, it is the same. But for me, it kind of comes from a lot of the records that I listened to, because a lot of the compositions back in the days, you have one side of a 33. You would have, usually on a westernized record, you would maybe have 5-6 songs.
Yeah.
But if you go to Nigeria, you'll have it be 2 songs. So it will be very long. So it has the room to build up. And then you have the lead guitar singing the melodies. And it even goes back to the idea of, where I come from in Igbo land. We have the Udu drum that we will play, that will have different notes to communicate.
Yeah.
So even when it comes to when people say music is a language, it goes deeper.
Yes.
It really does. But even when it comes to the context of guitar, I'll be honest with you, B.B. King.
Really? Yes.
Was one of the ones that I saw growing up, and I saw his face. I was always sometimes if you come and see me live, I will just be my girlfriend is here. She'll always say, "Oh, babes, what are you doing with your face?" I'll say, "Hey, I'm feeling the spirit, man." But I saw that in B.B. King, and I was like, I got it.
Right.
I felt it. Even when you look at somebody like Bob Marley,
absolutely,
and he's moving, I'm understanding
that
you're transfixed in music, and being that symbolism.
Yeah.
Of what people are experiencing.
Yeah.
And
BB's playing too, so accessible in a way, because it was never going for pyrotechnic.
Yeah.
It was always going for a feeling.
Yes.
And so I imagine, hearing that as an impressionable, musician, guitar player, whatever, that's a fun thing, because you think oh, you get that note. And if you have the music inside of you and you bend that note a little bit and you make the face, kind of get close to BB.
That's the whole thing.
Right.
Because don't get me wrong. I always say that with music, there is a hierarchy of how you intake it. it always starts direct, organic.
Yes.
You know, so like in that way, if somebody is, if I'm able to, you're able to see me do it.
Yeah.
Hear me, the resonation of the room. If it's caught on record, that's cool.
Right.
You know, if it's caught on video, that's fine.
Yep.
But it will be nothing. Even if it is able to resonate with those videos and those records, it's good. But it will be nothing without the organic experience.
Yes.
You know,
without the feedback of the crowd, without something happening, the energy in that
I
space.
and I.
Yeah.
I am you. You are me. We are each other. You know, some people will say Ubuntu, but that's in Africa. But in Jamaica, they say Rastafarian. I and I. You know, in some cultures they talk about the yin and yang. Yeah. Life is satire. Sometimes that's why I say life is satire. Until you get that we're all on the same team,
Yeah.
life will either take care of you,
Oh, sure.
or it'll take care of you.
Yeah. Right.
You know, so I humble myself. I've had those experiences where life has taken care of me in both ways.
Yeah.
And I always wanted to be a learner of life. You
Yes.
know? So, amen.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But at least, I was going to ask you, brother, how did you start your relationship with Scott? How did you start your journey in creative direction? Because for me, I'm creative director of this collective here in Minneapolis called the Ozone Creations.
Yes.
But we started at about 5 years ago, but you're just doing it at such a consistency where I do have to humble myself and just pick your brain on how.
I don't know very many creative directors, so it's so fun to be across the table from another one. I don't know what I'm doing, really. I mean, that's really the truth. I really don't know what I'm doing, but I definitely have a compass, I guess, of what I think is right and what I think is cool. That's a shallow word, but like cool being authentic and what's going to resonate with the community of bass players or the people that we're trying to give value to. You know, I have a sense of what they want and what they think is going to be good and what they think is going to be corny, you know. But Scott, the relationship with Scott started with Instagram. Yeah. I had probably, I don't know, I had maybe 2,000 followers, right? And I was documenting this studio change. Like I was tearing out the floors of my old studio and putting them in. I had a friend, we call him Uncle Rick. He's not really an uncle, but you know, this guy coming around. Uncle vibes for sure. And he was coming around and we were doing that and I was filming all that. And it was the beginning of my, like, I'm going to document. And Scott started watching all those stories. And then I took a little break. There was like a week where I didn't post anything. And then I woke up one morning about a week later and my like follower count had like quadrupled. Oh, wow. And I was like, what? And like, you know, just almost like my phone had like melted into the dresser from all the notifications. I mean, it was
you're like, what is happening?
Yeah. And I was like, how? I thought I got hacked or something. And I found Scott on the SBL channel saying, I don't know what happened to this guy, but he was my favorite content creator, and now he hasn't posted for a week, and I'm scared that he's gone. So everybody here, please go follow him and tell him that he can't stop. And, I mean, it was this shocking realization of the power of platform and influence because suddenly, all these people. And, you know, and I had just taken, like, I hadn't even thought, I wasn't like taking a break, quote unquote. I just hadn't posted in a minute. But after that, I went to him and said, I think I'm good at X, Y, and Z. And if you need any of that in your life, I'm the guy. And we didn't talk about money. We didn't talk about terms. We just started very organically. He gave me an opportunity. I tried to kill it the best of my ability. And he liked that. And we went from there and we went from there. And and I ended up being the creative director of this huge, it's essentially, I mean, it's a huge bass education platform. But my role in it is really with YouTube and content creation. So we're thinking about YouTube a ton. And I think that what I do creatively for that channel is different than what maybe most creative directors do.
Oh yeah.
Because I'm not involved in art direction or like layout or graphic design.
It's almost like you can say it's almost like a degree, but you have like emphasis depending on what you're really doing it in.
Yeah.
You know, because like I can say the same because I'm really creative direction based off of visuals and the music.
Yes.
And it came from me just being the producer around my friends that was able to mix and master.
Yes.
You know, be able to just kind of, because in my headspace, I'm like, we're in a city that has a really great heritage of music.
Yep.
But we have to be in a space where we're able to stand our own in the world market.
Right.
You know, so I know I have a duty in the context of an engineer that this is going to be this artist's calling card. So if they're in a room, then they're able to show it. It's not again, it's a humble thing. It's not about me.
Yeah.
It's making sure that they got the best opportunity in that case with this record we're working on.
Yeah.
You know?
So you're mixing and mastering. Is that, how did you fall in love with that? Because you have to love that to do it.
Yes.
Right? How did you fall in love with that?
You know, I fell in love with it based off of records.
Yeah.
The sound of records. How some of the records could sound so limiting. Of like, it's like there's not a lot of stuff going on, but it's making me feel this type of way, to a bunch of things going on, and it's making me feel this type of way.
Right.
So I was like, how do you manipulate sound to do such thing?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. I've always been in love watching YouTube videos of, you know, producers like Lee Scratch Perry in the studio.
Yes.
Watching like you were saying, like Graceland. Just quick segue. Ramsey County Library. I got the tape of Graceland.
Yes.
I dubbed the tape and made 4 copies. I have them all.
That's great.
Oh man, because before I had an iPod. Yeah,
great.
but
Yeah.
but I watched the footage of how Paul Simon put it together.
Yeah.
The synergy. I fell in love with the synergy. And I just said, in my context, with just to give him a shout out, Breezy, you already know. He's like my big bro. But he started rapping, and I was like, how can I help?
Yeah.
In that context, anything that you need me to do. I started mixing and mastering for him. Went well. Started getting acquainted with some other good friends that got into music. Before you know it, old friends that I knew that I didn't know that were into music asked. And I do have an kind of what I call saving my peace. If I see somebody that really has the drive, that, let's say they might not be the best singer, best rapper, but they just want to evolve. The urgency of evolution, I will help. But if it's just like, hey man, I see you pretty cool, man.
Right.
I will support you, but in this respect, I have to save my peace.
Yes.
You know.
Yes.
But yeah, that's how I got into it. 2019, I released a music video called Tsunami. I mixed and mastered the song, directed the video. But that was kind of like my first example of, to my people I was working with, in this theory. What if we did it kind of like this?
Yeah.
You know, we have just a simple music video. The album art is like a movie poster, you know, and at least we have content for a good couple of months with the music video to extend, to put into micro content that it can sustain itself.
Yes.
And that was just like my theory. Don't get me wrong. It's not to say that it's been done before, but in an efficient way to the independent artist.
Yep. Right.
Was my thing. Yeah.
I got it. Okay. What is something about mixing a record that is a must do, or maybe even a secret that you do? Like, do you have something that you're like, oh, I always do this thing. I haven't really talked about it. Like, is there a nugget? Is there a pearl of wisdom that you would share?
I mean, to be honest, like for me, I have a very analog head.
Yeah.
That's what I would describe in my mixing process. If you're able to psychologically say that this computer in your studio is not a computer, it is only to facilitate tracks like a tape machine.
Yeah.
then start with that's your palette. Because I do believe, and not to come and put anybody down, but I feel like there is an aura of ignorance when it comes to the creation of music in our current day.
Like drill into that. What is that?
It's like the context of having a threshold of how many takes you take.
Yes.
If I'm in a situation and scenario that I find myself taking how many takes for 10, 20 minutes, I'm not being real with myself. I'm not being real with the people I'm working with.
Like something else is wrong, or there's an issue.
Yeah. It would be, my process is mainly like in the context of mixing. We've already said everything is analog, and the computer does not exist. But now in the process of producing, because for me, I'm a Quincy Jones producer. I started out as a Metro Boomin producer.
Okay.
But now I'm in the context of like, the Lennon McCartney type vibe. Curating it.
Yes.
And everything when it comes to the conducting and everything like that. So if I am going beyond 5 takes, it's okay. I don't have to put so much pressure on myself. Let me move on. And if I move on all the time, usually in those cases, whether it be me, any client that I work with, there's the agility we're looking for that take that we were trying to do.
Oh, that's cool.
So now let's go back to it.
Yeah.
And what? It took you 1 take? There we go. There it is.
Because you'd set up some boundary or the environment so that the 1 take was the one versus let's just get 20.
Yeah.
Let's not set up the environment. We'll get 30 takes. We'll cobble something together.
As a producer and somebody that mixes, I try to respect people's chi. I try my best to respect people's chi.
Yeah.
And also remember that I'm a navigator. I always love being a navigator for people.
Yeah.
Helping people navigate. Because in that context, I know I am my own main character.
Yeah.
I cannot be main character for anybody.
Right.
I have to be supporting.
Yeah.
So what can I do? I can navigate.
Yeah.
I can be like, yo, bro, yo, sis, this is your idea. What about this?
Sure.
You don't like it? All right, how about this? You like this one? All right, how about the next one? And we'll keep on going.
Yes.
That's what I've been doing for the past decade.
Yeah.
And it's been nothing but feels right, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I have a friend, do you know Jeremy Messersmith? Singer-songwriter in town. He talks about this thing in songwriting that I have wondered about in mixing too. He said that every song, and I think every mix too, needs a lion, tigers, and bears moment. Meaning like lions, tigers, and bears, oh my. Like where there's something that sticks out of the song or of the mix that catches you off guard.
Yes.
And that every single, whether it's a lyric that, third verse, there's a knife twist in the lyric, or in the production, there's a huge reverb that suddenly gets chopped by something and creates like a pause in the listener and like a paying attention. Are you ever trying to intentionally make moments like that in mixes?
Yes. Was recently working on it yesterday.
Yeah.
One of the people in my collective, her name is Summer.
Yeah.
She's getting ready to release her EP, and she has a really great song where she has a lot of vocals, and the beat that it's there. I'm working on cutting some of it out.
Yeah.
It's usually in that context for me, it's like the theory of it being less is more.
Yes.
Starting with less. So that way when the full energy comes,
there's room for it.
It's purposeful.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
It makes sense. We're able to go through those ebbs and flows, like you said, with the lion, tigers, and bear thing.
Yeah.
And because don't get me wrong, I think it's very true, but I try to be weary of it and careful, because I feel like in that context, it is giving the space of it being like, this is needed.
Yeah.
And unless the time comes that is really needed, it will show itself to be.
Yeah, you don't want to force the moment.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like almost like the context of, even cool mistakes.
Right.
I would be playing my guitar and I'll just be like into it, and I'm just like, did I just do that? I'm like, whoa, go.
Right.
You know, so
Could be the
even in
best
those
stuff.
situations, giving space for the energy to exist,
Right.
you know, is the best explanation I can give for at least the mixing. And also too, J37 plugin. I'm in love with it for the nerds, you know, at least because you know I'm working with binary.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Right.
so like in my context, anything I can do to manipulate the sound to be as analog as possible,
Right.
I will do. Even with my more contemporary mixes, you know, I recently just got a Tascam M30.
Cool.
So it's like old like
Like a
1980s. Actually,
Is
I
it
have
real?
it's actually a console. It's like an 8-channel console, but essentially what happens is that you can use it for summing.
Oh, cool.
So
Yeah.
I just have the loop-de-loop in my system, and then I'm able to just push everything through there, even if it's on Unity, just to kind of get that pulsation to go back into the computer and know it's all gluing together.
Yeah. Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, so I've just always been a big fan of that with any of my mixes too.
Cool. I need to check out more of your mixes.
Oh yeah, man. I appreciate you. Yeah, and at least also I have a couple of other questions that I know I need to ask. At least, you know, with A Witch and a Saint, I don't I love the bass sound.
Yeah.
And just being a personal fan, I was just gonna say, do you know, like, you know, what was the chain like that you went through? What was your bass? What was the preamp? Do you know?
Dude, you don't know how much that makes my heart happy to
Yeah.
like there are certain artists over there like, no, I don't remember it all. I remember that stuff to a fault.
Yes.
Actually. Like I'm such a nerd about that
Yeah.
stuff. Making that song, and actually I made an entire record with Jay that was all just bass and drums and vocal. And I don't know if it will ever come out. But there are songs that we did. He would stand by me and sing these melody ideas that he wanted on the bass.
Yeah.
And it was so different than how I'm used to doing sessions where I'm, you know, learning the root progression of the song and playing bass. You know, he wanted melodic stuff, and it was so amazing working with him. Just number one, and he was wonderfully open to different sounds, and he wanted me to try different things, and like, what would you do on this? Not like, what do you think is right, but like, what does your creative heart tell you?
Yes.
So that sound on Witch and a Saint is an old Fender jazz bass from 1968 with old flat wound strings.
Yeah.
And it's essentially played through a spring reverb pedal and then a tremolo. And playing bass through reverb and tremolo is not really done very much. Yes, right. It's not very orthodox. But I came up in a rural town in Montana.
Yeah.
My parents loving country music, and I hated it.
Yeah.
I wanted nothing more to leave and to be a city kid. Country music, yuck, gross. Wow. And then I turned 40 and had this kind of like, who am I?
Oh.
And there was this real return to, you know, like I had real fond memories of my mom and dad and grandparents and stuff listening to Glenn Campbell, listening to Johnny Cash, right? And I came back to that sound of like a guitar or a bass through that spring reverb and tremolo. It's a very country sound, kinda.
Yes.
Or maybe like spaghetti western, but it's not. It's like not granite. It's like earthy.
Yeah, it's very earthy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I love it and came to love that sound. And so I ended up playing that for Jay, wondering if he would say like, nah.
Yeah. Oh, man.
And he loved it. He loved that sound. It felt, you know, earthy and cool to him.
Yeah, bro. And and honestly, like the thing about it for me was, you know, even I'm happy you bring up country, because even when you look at country music, growing up, my dad loved Charlie Pride.
Oh yeah, sure.
Loved listening to him.
Yeah.
Ray Charles.
Yeah.
Especially like, like his stuff that he did post, like I think it was ABC Days.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a twang in high life music
Yes.
that we usually have that I feel like is the reason why you see so many people from sub-Saharan Africa gravitate to country music.
Oh, wow.
And that's why even like, I don't know if you've heard of this guy named Shabuzi.
I don't know.
Yeah, he just did an album, a record with Beyonce.
Ah.
Yeah. So
Cowboy Carter?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, but he's Nigerian. But he does country music.
So cool.
Because like even in that context, like I've always been a big fan of that sound, because I've always said like, if I listen to maybe even the early stuff of Buddy Holly,
Yep.
if I listen to the stuff of Johnny Cash, I'm going to probably be able to find a way to integrate
Absolutely.
the sounds.
Yes.
Sukus with this filter. Put this in there.
It's the best.
Yes.
Honestly.
Honestly, even when we talk about the track, I felt the Brown Eyed Girl feeling. I felt the Wimowe feeling.
Mm-hmm.
I felt a lot of things come into one that's something brand new. So that I at least had to come and ask that question, because the bass was just fully giving what it needed. I recently just got my first flat wound bass.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had what is it called? It's a precision bass.
Yes.
Yeah, so it came with flat wounds. So
Awesome.
I've been
It's
using
a totally different vibe, right? It's like when they get older too, those strings, the more you play them, the more they reward you.
Yeah.
Versus like guitar strings can sort of wear out, right? Or like the regular round wound strings, but those flats,
That's
the
a
more
legacy of
dirt they get on them.
Yeah.
In fact, James Jamerson, Motown bass
Yes,
player,
sir.
right?
We're talking about it in real life. Yes.
He actually broke a string on his bass and called Labella, the string company, and asked if they could weld it.
Weld it.
Yes, he just was desperate, because those strings, they take on a persona and a sound. The strings are as important as the pickups, as the amp, as it's the thing you interface with.
Yes,
and
that's true.
you put a decade into those strings, they have this earthiness and vibe, and you change them, and then they're all new and lame.
It's too tinny, man.
Yeah. You seem like somebody that doesn't have boundaries around, I like this, hate that. You seem to me to be really open in terms of music, and whereas, you hear a lot of people say the dumb sentence of, I've listened to everything except this and this. I listen to everything except hip hop and country, or whatever it is, right? Pick the two things. But you hear that sentence a lot, or sometimes I do. Were you always open, or did you have a time period where you were like, no, don't like that, don't like that. I am super focused on a certain genre, or have you always been so cool about pulling in different things to make your thing?
That's a good question, man. I usually like to tell people sometimes, if it's the first time that they meet me, I snitch on myself and tell them I'm not a musician, I'm not an artist, I'm not a producer. Yeah, I'm an ethnomusicologist.
Yes.
And I feel like I've been an ethnomusicologist since I was a kid.
Wow.
And again, that comes from just the dissonance of listening to the music that I grew up with from my parents, and looking at the world outside, and then also having the opportunity of listening to that same music where it came from.
Yeah.
And I was like, the world is so big.
Yeah.
It's not so small. So I've always said to myself, what can I do to enlighten myself about how large the world is?
Oh, that's a great word.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I've said the best context of it would be music,
For
know?
sure.
So even with it, I don't try to, in my ethnomusicology, purposefully try to put links together, because I do see in the history of ethnomusicology, unfortunate artificialness to it. But what I tend to do and what I hope to do in my future is to really see the best out of everything and ask the deep questions and learn about the culture, learn about the heritage. Because if I have a culture and heritage, there's millions of them out there.
Right.
So I want to enlighten myself and be able to just have an open ear. You know, I guess with me being a Virgo, it's like I don't like to talk too much, but I do talk a lot. But I humble myself in the ratio of my life, and when I be honest on my life, I don't talk much and I listen more. You know, for that reason, for when I do talk a lot, it makes sense. So I'm always doing it, but it's time.
Yeah, you just have a really an openness about what you're willing to let in. I can tell that it's not fearful, and it's admirable. I think sometimes people compartmentalize because they're trying to find identity or something, and they say, "Yep, this is who I am, not that, not that." But I love that thought of like, if you pull in from country, right? If you pull in from these things, you're not gonna become that. It's just gonna broaden the thing that you are. Right.
And that's what I've seen in history every single time. Don't get me wrong, in the context of politics and whatnot and civilization, unfortunately some conquerors got the upper hand. But when it comes to the world and the aura of creativity, the victors have always been the ones that are willing to be enlightened.
Yeah, right.
I can't think of any artist, no matter how good of a person they are, how bad of a person that they are, that did not give the opportunity for them to enlighten themselves.
Yes.
Every single one of them enlightened themselves. When Jimi Hendrix was doing shotgun.
Right.
And doing that, knowing what bluegrass is. When you see Lady Smith, Black Mambazo, in the context of choral music, going from that and being and having choral music mix with the traditional music of their people, integrating that, the regality of what it means to have that type of choir. Even and this is in the context of Paul Simon, you know, watching their documentaries. I love just learning. I'm a public television kid. I think that's what has really got to me too. I never had cable.
Oh, right.
Never had cable up until like middle school, high school. Even at my house now, no cable.
That's
YouTube.
There's a lot of YouTube.
The times they are.
They sure are. Yes.
Man. And then also, I want to see if I can get my couple more questions.
Sure.
Because, yes. 10
Okay.
minutes? Wow, it went by quickly. Wow, this is good though. So at least for you, what 3 bassists, at least in the span of your career, do you say has really have really inspired you when it comes to at least the context of their fearlessness and their creativity?
A big one for me is Tony Levin, who plays still with Peter Gabriel. And he was a session player, played with Pink Floyd, and I'm going to forget other bands, but really an interesting character in that was played on all of these artist records, but sort of had an identity and a cool creativity. And when he plays a note, you know it's him. And that's a really interesting line to walk as a bass player, where you're serving a song, but you also have your own identity. And I think that's something that I really strive for in my playing, is like, I want to have a lens, I want to have a sound, I want to have a thing I'm going for, but I also really want you to like it. I want the artist to go, yes, hell yeah, that's it. You know, so that's what I tried to do with Jay, right? To sort of balance that thing. So Tony Levin is a great example of that. Also 100% Bakiti Kumalo. I went, when I got a chance to go to Scotland to study in college, and I brought a fretless bass with me, and I brought the Graceland record, and I learned the whole Graceland record to the best of my ability. But he's a huge influence on me. So Bakiti, and then maybe, geez, oh, I liked a lot of like hard rock music too. And so like Geddy Lee from Rush is another one that was a big deal to me growing up. But I think I really liked bass players in the context of songs.
Yeah, okay.
So instead of like finding bass players that were like incredible solo machines like Victor Wooten or Marcus Miller, or I liked that stuff, but I'm like a pop music kid. I wanted to hear it in a song. I want to hear something cool in a song like Sledgehammer. Like the bass line in Sledgehammer is crazy.
Yeah,
it's so cool. Or the bass line in Diamonds on the Soles of Her Shoes. Like, it's so signature and cool. And I have wanted to bring that into the things that I do because of those players.
And even in that context too, it's like, just to kind of go deeper in what you described, it's almost as if the bass, like, what is the bassist doing to establish a basis to the composition? Like, what are they doing to kind of give their own? I remember being in middle school, and then there was this guy trying to make fun of me, and he was like, "You play bass? Like, that's not even a real guitar." And I said, "My guy, what is it called? A bass? So it's the bass. If without the bass, it will not last." And he was like, "Oh man, I didn't think about it that way." I said, "Yeah, man, let's be real. If you don't know if it's in the name, then you're going to be lost."
Yeah, it's the bottom of everything. You take it away and it's over.
Yes, man. Then the gisa don't fall. And then also, you're in Minnesota.
Yeah.
You're here.
I'm here.
How long have you been here?
Since 1997.
Really?
Yes, 1997.
Oh, wow.
It's nice to know you.
Yeah, likewise, and you're here.
Yeah, absolutely. I went to McAllister College in St. Paul, started in 97, and graduated in 01 and stayed.
Rugged.
Yeah.
I went to church at Westminster Presbyterian.
Okay.
So we always had the McAllister Sundays with the bagpipes.
Bagpipes. Check this out. Check this out. My grandfather, Roy Richardson, got a full ride to McAllister College in the 50s. Yeah. Half football, half bagpipes, and he started the pipe band there. So either like you're welcome or I'm sorry. like for however bagpipes hit you from Mac, either you're welcome or I'm sorry.
That's crazy. Because even growing up in the church, going to Westminster, I always loved McAllister Sundays.
Oh, yeah.
I loved the context of how the bagpipe was very similar to like a violin.
Yeah, right.
You have to play it right. If you don't play it right,
if it's out of tune, and it's like maybe always a little out of tune.
It's almost like in the context if you were an archer and you had a target.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I feel like, and to each their own, but because the bass is so poignant, you can have a big target or you can have a small target.
Yeah.
But for the context of playing and the bagpipe and the violin, it's like the target's so tight.
Yes.
And you have to be in some type of homeostasis to really play it well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we're here.
You're here.
Well, and you are too.
Yeah.
And, okay. And let me ask you this before we before we have to wrap it up.
Okay.
Let me ask you this. If I could eat food professionally, goodbye to the bass. Goodbye.
Yeah.
I love food.
Yeah.
And so I don't know anything about Nigerian food.
Yes.
Is there a place that I need to go in this city to eat delicious Nigerian food?
Oh, there's quite a few.
And could we go together sometime?
I'd love to.
Okay.
Say that.
Good.
Yes.
Okay. And what do I need to eat? Like, if my first experience isn't with you, what do I need to eat?
So the idea is always start with the jollof rice.
Okay.
The jollof rice, the best way I can say it in the context of like Western is like, it's almost like jambalaya.
Yeah. Okay.
But it is kicking. It is sweet. It is hot. It is just right.
Yes.
Yeah. So jollof rice, Nigerian jollof rice.
Yep.
You know, don't get me wrong. Shout out to Ghana. Shout out to Sierra Leone, all of them. But it's
you're like, but
let's be real. I'm just gonna keep it there. No, but that's, and then also too, I feel like if you do you like meats, you like ribs and stuff like that?
yes,
So you might like meat pie.
of 100%.
Meat
Yes.
pie, yeah.
I have a rule in my life, which is if there is a group of people that thinks it's delicious, I'm in.
Yeah, say
I
that.
at least want to try it.
Yeah, man.
Like I want to try it. I want to experience that. I think like music and food are the two cultural
Yes.
connectors,
Mm-hmm.
and I couldn't do this today and not ask you about food because like Nigerian food is not something that I'm familiar with.
Yeah, and then also too, that's why I say in that respect, I appreciate that, because now when you talk about Nigerian food, all jokes aside, it ebbs and flows with different cultures around sub-Saharan Africa for us.
Yeah.
So like even you might hear about, an idea of pounded yam, farina. That's almost like, imagine like mashed potatoes, but you
Yes.
can really roll it in a ball.
Oh yeah.
And then you just have it. It's almost like dumpling texture.
Oh, yeah.
Dip
you
it in,
dunk it.
and then you eat it with the meats in the soup. Yeah.
Yeah.
Better yet, I think there's a couple of places, but I might take you to my mom's place to eat.
Oh my
I think a home cooking will be better
would
for
be
now.
honored.
But big shout out to Wazobia in Minneapolis. Big shout outs to them. And there's some other restaurants too
Yeah.
in Minneapolis that would be good too. But
Amazing.
my mom's cooking, no bias.
That's the best. Oh, amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, bro.
Cool.
But brother, it's an honor, it's a privilege
Likewise.
to be at this space doing this interview with you. And just to kind of say it on, you've been an inspiration for me.
Wow.
You have really been somebody that I've looked up to in the context of how to educate people, how to be able to just evolve. I love your evolution, and I hope you keep on evolving
Oh, thank you, man.
the same way that you are. Because I'm a big believer, energy does not go there or here. It just renews.
Yeah.
And I just love to see it the way it is. And it's an honor that you're from this city too. You know what I mean? Like,
Well, it's
Thank
like,
you, bro.
well, thank you, because I feel like I just having this experience with you is going to evolve me in a different way if I hadn't had this experience with you. You know what I mean? So I really appreciate that.
yeah,
I appreciate the experience
Appreciate
and the
you.
hang. Yeah.
right
I
on.
appreciate Flavor World too.
Big shout out to Flavor World. You guys are magical, man. Yes, man. But
Yeah. Right on.
big up, bro.
Yeah, that was so fun.
Man.